Elise support is the latest flavor of the month pick. She is very strong. We've seen her in pro play by some of the best supports in the world as of late. She's been an absolute menace in solo queue for quite a while now, but she is tricky to pull off. So today I'm going to be talking about her build, why she's seen so much success lately, and give you guys a basic overview of how to play her. Support Academy is an improvement-focused, dedicated, and tight-knit support community that has seen consistent results since its inception. With regular coaching sessions throughout the week, an active community, and exclusive educational content enjoyed by our members, there's no better time to join. Visit wtl.lol/cupcake and let's get to work. The link is in the description below. I wanted to start talking about her build. So what we're going to be running is Dark Harvest, and then Sudden Impact. This is going to proc off of your Spider Form Q because it provides that dash and it does a bunch of true damage. That's going to feel really nice. And then we're going to be going Deep Ward here. The other two options in this Domination branch have been, this entire branch is pretty new and the others are kind of struggling a little bit. So for lack of a better alternative, Deep Ward is going to fit just fine. We're going to see some variation here between Bounty Hunter and Relentless Hunter. I prefer Bounty Hunter. I think it's quite important to hit our more expensive items as quickly as possible to really give that strength and that power that we're looking for on Elise. But you will see quite a lot of Relentless Hunter to run around and kill people and get to fights faster as well. So you can play around with that one a little bit. In terms of the secondary tree, we're going Precision here, which is of course very rare for supports of any class to take. But the reason is so that we can go Triumph and then we can go Coup de Grace just to do a bunch of damage to give us a bit more gold injection with the Triumph. When you get a takedown, then you're going to get a little bit of extra gold. You're going to get a little bit of healing there as well. And basically, there aren't many other decent options for secondary runes for Elise. You could consider running Sorcery and then getting Absolute Focus in something else. Maybe Absolute Focus in Celerity to run around a little bit. But this is by far the most successful and most commonly used secondary runes, and it's just going to feel great. And trying to build mage and carry items on a support is always tricky. So that's why I really like Bounty Hunter and Triumph. What you might notice in pro play is less Dark Harvest and more Electrocute. I believe that this is just due to the nature of pro play versus solo queue. Games are going to be more slow and controlled, and you don't get to just be at 10 fights within the first 10 minutes of the game where you can really start to stack up Dark Harvest. Pro play is naturally less explosive. They're going to be less heavy trades and things like that. So they're going to take Electrocute. I think you're going to find a lot more success with Dark Harvest in your own games. For the rune stats, nothing too special here. Double Adaptive. Our champion is all about just doing a bunch of damage and killing people, so that's where that's going to help. And then the only thing worth mentioning here is the flat health over the scaling health for that third rune stat. We want flat health because we just want to be as strong as possible. And the later that the game goes on, then that's not really when our champion is going to be coming online. We also really want flat health to be as proactive as possible in the early to mid game. That's what our champion wants to do. We're going to talk about this more, but Elise is one of the best diving champions in the game, and having as much of a health pool for that in the early stages is going to go a long way. Moving on to her items now, and this is really going to make her shine. So we're going to be basically rushing Sork Shoes. This is a great item as just a standalone spike with that flat magic pen, which does a lot of work in the early to mid game, and having that mobility to run around the map to find yourselves in all of these team fights and skirmishes that are breaking out consistently. That's going to feel really nice. Bloodsong, whichever support can apply Bloodsong, I think is in a favorable state in the meta. I think the other support quest items have been struggling for a while. They haven't been receiving much love, and especially Zazax, that got nerfed, and that would be the only other alternative that really helps you to deal damage and kill someone. But Bloodsong, it is a fantastic item to go with Elise's identity and with her kit. She can apply it very easily in spider form. She can apply it consistently with a lot of her different spells that she can rotate between in human and in spider form. I've even been taking Bloodsong on different champions like Time Kench support and Rel support because I think it's just performing the best out of all the support quest items right now. We can consider an early Dark Seal in the build, if you're just kind of between your boots and then completing another different item, I wouldn't really recommend playing completing the Dark Seal into Medjai's though. I find that you don't really want to be playing for KDA as Elise, and the later that the game goes on, the more that you are happy just kind of trading your life for a carry's life or something. But an early Dark Seal, getting a bunch of stacks, it's going to feel pretty nice. I wanted to mention Alternator here by itself before we complete Storm Surge, because this item is a very powerful item in and of itself. It gives you just a burst of extra magic damage when you land a spell on an enemy. So when we are building towards Storm Surge, which we should be rushing, I mean, after the boots, of course, then Alternator is going to be our first option. And it's really easy to build Alternator. It builds out of a couple of amp tomes, so you're going to feel good building towards it. You're going to feel good when you complete it. You're going to be feeling good about this spike and this spike and this spike and this spike. And so you can probably start to see why Elise is really coming together in terms of her build. But yeah, Storm Surge is a fantastic first item. Really suits her kit. So when you have your Storm Surge, I really want you to embrace that spike. It's going to feel great. It's going to deal a lot of damage. You're going to get around the map quickly. And then we start to deviate a little bit after Storm Surge. We can consider Shadow Flame. I prefer this as the second fully completed item. Personally, I think it does an insane amount of burst damage for Elise's kit. Of course, the problem is that if you're trying to build these two full mage items, that's a lot of gold. It's going to be quite tricky unless you're really good at Elise and you're getting a lot of early kills. Some games it might end too quickly for you to be able to complete this, but this is also going to build out of an Alternator and a needlessly large rod, so you can sit on that Alternator again. Otherwise, you will see some Shurelia's second, probably more so in professional play because, again, the games are slower. You're going to have less kills, less gold to work with, and you're going to have like more organized situations where you really want to be as strong as possible, and completing two full items might not be as reasonable in pro play versus in solo queue. So I just wanted to explain why you might see Shurelia's on some pro play games instead. But the good thing about Shurelia's is it's very affordable, and it gives you some decent stats, right? And especially that movement speed, even in the passive, let alone the active, getting around to fights as quickly as possible, and speeding everyone up and creating a fast and explosive environment, which Elise is going to thrive in. But apart from Shurelia's, we're going to round out the build with a couple of situational items, right? Zhonya's is probably, I don't even know if this is situational. Like, this is always going to be quite nice, especially the later in the game that you get. You're going to get your full rotation of spells off, and then you're not going to have much to do, and you are susceptible at getting focused down, especially if your spider form E is on cooldown, and then just having that Zhonya's to buy yourself some time to get off your next rotation of spells, or for your teammates to kind of help you out. You also might struggle to just one-shot people in the late game, and so that's why Zhonya's just getting that extra rotations of spells could be pretty crucial. But of course, if you are finding yourself against assassins or champions with high burst, then Zhonya's is always going to feel nice at any stage of the game. And then of course, Void Staff. This is half situational, half we're just going to buy this at the end of our build anyway. Even if people aren't building a lot of magic resist, in the late game, they're going to have a lot of levels and have naturally built up a lot of magic resist just through their base stats, and then Void Staff is going to provide a lot of extra damage. But we're playing Elise support. We're probably going to have an AP member either in our mid lane or our jungle as well. The enemy team is going to buy some magic resist, and then here we go, we can buy our Void Staff and then be, you know, at least somewhat relevant throughout all stages of the game. I now want to talk about why Elise support is finding a lot of success and she is quite strong in the meta. I'm going to start by talking about itemization and runes because that's where we just came from. So I believe that traditional supports are struggling with itemization and even runes now. Items like Locket and Zeke's and Knight's Vow, I've mentioned this before, but these have all been nerfed pretty consistently to nerf these items showing up in other roles like top lane and like jungle. When they become very efficient, then other roles start to buy them, especially in pro play where they have a little bit of a slower paced game and less income. But then of course that nerfs it for the actual supports, right? So engagers have had a tough time, and I think that a lot of strength for a champion comes from having really effective items and runes. If we think about 2024, when Janna was running absolute rampaging through solo queue, her runes and her items were excellent, and then Riot started to nerf them, especially the items, right? I believe that Janna was a very big contributor to why Zazax got nerfed. I believe she was a huge contributor to why Shurelius got nerfed, and Mandate got nerfed. And then they nerfed a little bit of her kit, and then suddenly she started to struggle a little bit more. If you think of a support like Bard, he was having a lot of success for a very long time, I believe, because he could use the domination rune tree as a secondary page very well, with Zombie Ward, which was an incredibly broken rune, and Relentless Hunter. And what Riot ended up doing was they removed Zombie Ward, and they added this branch here with the Deep Ward and the this and the that, and they nerfed Relentless Hunter to not give any stats at the start of the game. Other supports have also gone through the phases of building Warmogs, which got nerfed about 5 to 10 times for supports, and now that's dead. They've played around with a little bit of Heartsteel, which can work on some champions in some games. They're trying to build items that aren't traditional tanky support items because those aren't as strong anymore. But the TLDR is that this rune page and item setup is just strong and it works right now. It does a lot of damage, it synergizes well, it's going to have very fast and explosive spikes, just Sork Shoes and Bloodsong and Hextech Alternator, and you're already a huge menace. And why that might be important, especially the fast spiking, is because League of Legends in Season 15, at least at the making of this video, is fast-paced, right? There was a lot of discussion in the community about feats of strength and whether it was OP or whether it's not. Currently, I barely ever complete the boots into the tier 3 form, although of course getting that initial free movement speed just from winning it is nice. But regardless of the value of the feats of strength, games are fast-paced, games are ending quickly, and it's up to us to adapt to that pace or to even inject volatility and make the games fast-paced. And maybe it's because the community is overvaluing feats of strength. Maybe it's because Arakan is a relevant and powerful neutral objective that everyone wants to contest and fight for, and you want to be in a strong position by the time that that comes around. Or maybe it's because other roles have strong runes and items for certain champions that like to play a faster pace of game. Whatever the case may be, I've been observing a fast pace of game in my games and in my students' games at all ranks. I also believe that ADCs, and I mean this is not going to be a controversial opinion, but ADCs are quite weak, very weak in fact, in Season 15. And the reason that this is relevant is because if ADCs are strong, then more of your decisions would go to ensuring that they are in a good spot to carry the game, right? But their items kind of suck at the moment. The games are going to finish before ADCs get to complete their third item and then just 1v9 a team fight. And this is something that I've really embraced in Season 15 with a fast-paced game. No hate to ADCs, but I am very willing and just completely ditching my ADC and just going to roam to the rest of the map and to play around my mid and my jungle and to fight at neutral objectives and to go dive mid and top and whatever. And if the game ends up being a 4v5 where my ADC is completely useless, but I have a very fed mid and jungle and I'm fed and we have every neutral objective, I'm going to win the game. And it's no surprise that the strongest bot laners at the moment are either mages who have strong early spikes. If they get their Sork Shoes and they get their one item spike, whatever it might be, whether it's Ludens or Storm Surge or Leandries or whatever, that is a meaningful, powerful spike, and then they can be ready to fight earlier on in the game, whereas ADCs, especially like the typical scaling crit ADCs, would probably need 3 items. I do want to briefly mention Misfortune. I think that she is so strong at the moment because she only needs 2 items, right? She can go Bloodthirster and she can go Infinity Edge, and then she is an absolute menace. And the good thing about Bloodthirster is that it counters poke and mages quite a lot as well. Any ADCs watching this video, let me know what you think, but this is kind of my interpretation so far. And Elise is going to be naturally one of the strongest champions in the game at level 3, just because she unlocks her entire kit at such an early stage in the game. And like I was mentioning, you're going to feel all of her spikes. You're going to feel Sork Shoes, and then Bloodsong and Alternator and Storm Surge, and then when you get to your Storm Surge, you are going to be one-shotting any squishy champion for the next 10 to 15 minutes of the game. Now, Elise isn't the only champion that can roam away from bot, right? But she is going to probably do the most damage out of any of those supports. You think of Bard or Pike, they're more about the CC and the setting up and the mobility, but Elise does tremendous damage by herself. She also is one of the best tower divers in the game, which is amazing for ensuring you find success when you leave bot, because from the enemy team's perspective, let's say that they ping that the Elise support is missing, right? Then their teammates might play a little bit safer, but it doesn't matter because you can just dive them with your jungle. You can gang up on a lane, and then you can set up that gank, and then you can drop the tower aggro with your E, and then it basically doesn't matter if they're playing safely around your roam or not. And that's incredibly important, I believe, for consistency's sake. Now, the main difficulty from Elise support actually doesn't come from her kit. I believe it's quite easy to execute Elise mechanically, even though she has, 6 or 7 spells if you want to count her transformation in her kit. It's not that hard. You're basically just looking to land a human form E, and then smash your face against your keyboard, press every button, go spider form, press every button. The main skill that you're going to see is from her E usage. So her human E, of course, is going to be a skill shot, and nothing from the rest of your kit is going to help you land that. So this is going to just be how good are you at landing a skill shot, right? Can you cast it from fog so people can't react? Can you be aggressive enough to just kind of flash forwards and then find that surprise E so they can't juke? Can you just generally allow yourself the best chance possible to land it, right? Like, can you follow up on ally CC? Can you wait until they're next to terrain so that they can't juke in a certain direction? Can you hold the spell when you don't need to throw it and let the enemies kind of juke themselves silly, and then you just close the gap until you're on top of them and then you can't miss your E? So landing your cocoon is going to be a pretty big deal for Elise, but also your spider form E. We just have to understand that this is going to be our get out of jail free card. And if you use this spell randomly just to like gap close forwards, and then you don't really kill someone, and then you're trying to exit, you have no exit strategy, you die, that's worth keeping in mind, especially around the middle of the map where everyone is going to be naturally closer to. You want to preserve your spider form E quite a lot. But otherwise, apart from spell usage, the main thing is mentality. You need to have the right mentality to find success on Elise support. The first is be ready to ditch bot. This doesn't mean that you can never kill bot lane, but you aren't going to be a dedicated bot laner by the time that you are level 3, and especially by the time you have your tier 2 boots over here so you can move around the map a little bit faster. Don't feel bad about your ADC who is not doing as well as they would have liked because you're roaming a lot and then they're assist pinging and they're flaming you in chat. So if you wanted to be selfless and help your ADC, it's too late for that. You picked Elise. Let's win the game by doing what Elise does well. The next one is you are not a poke champion. I see this quite a lot with Elise supports. They deplete their mana pool so quickly with spamming human form Qs and Ws in lane. This is not how you want to play the champion. Your mana costs are very high. Your rune page is not going to help you at all with mana regeneration of any kind. You all in people. If you can all in, then you use all of your spells on them and you get a huge amount of damage. Otherwise, you basically never want to be throwing out your human form W for a little bit of poke. And at the start of the lane, when you're full mana, you can throw out 1, maybe 2 human form Qs. Otherwise, conserve your mana, have that threat so you can rotate through all of your spells when the time is appropriate. Value your level 3 spike. So if there is a skirmish that is unfolding near you and you're a level 3 Elise, you have a huge advantage over basically every other champion in the game. Embrace that. Go search out some action, link up with your teammate, fight people, whatever you can to embrace your level 3 spike. That's what we want to do. So the next point I want to talk about for mentality is to not hesitate. Your champion is fantastic at diving, at skirmishing, at roaming and finding picks, but you just need to be an absolute psycho in this regard. If you move towards a lane, just assist ping your teammate, shove ping them on the wave, make it clear that you're looking to gank or to dive, and then just do it. Just trust your champion's kit to do a great job at finding success there. This champion rewards zero hesitation and being an absolute psycho. What I want to talk about next is roaming well. And you have to develop the skill and be really good at roaming if you want to find success on a roaming support like Elise. The absolute number one piece of advice I can give you for finding successful roams at the moment is to just pressure with your jungle. This is a concept that I have mentioned countless times already in this season to my students. Pressure with your jungler. And when I say pressure, this means when your jungler is pressuring the map actively, when they are in river or more, then you're there with them. And the reason that I talk about this is because when your jungle is active on the map and they are pressuring, the enemy team kind of has to relieve that pressure. And if they don't relieve that pressure, they're going to lose neutral objectives, they're going to lose camps, their laners might get ganked or dove. So it's basically a win-win, right? And the more that your jungler is pressuring, let's say they're even counter jungling and they're really on the opposite side of the map, then you're very likely going to find some action there and you would want to be there. So when your jungler is pressuring the map, be there with them. I don't want you to see that they are heading the grubs and your bot lane and then you suddenly start to run up. That's too late, right? When they are pressuring, you want to be there with them. You need to match them. You need to move in advance so that when they are pressuring, you're there as well. The other reason that this is such an important concept is because if you're not pressuring when they are pressuring, if they are, let's say, on top side and you are on bot side, it's very risky for you to do anything bot side, because if your jungle is active and the enemy jungle isn't showing on that side of the map, then it's very likely that they are going to do something on your side of the map. And then if you're trying to be proactive away from your jungle and by the enemy jungle, that's probably not going to work, right? You're just going to get ganked and die. The last point about pressuring with jungle is if they aren't pressuring, if they're in base or if they're just farming camps, I don't want you to follow them around, right? So just keep in mind that when they are active, you're there with them, and that is very likely going to get you something as a team and ensure a number of advantages, right? If the support and the jungle is linked up, any lane you go to, there's going to be 3 there and you're going to kill someone. The next point to roam well is to be a fog warrior. So this is basically just embracing the fog, understanding how important it is to remain in fog and playing that information game. Don't show unless you are achieving something. Sometimes this can look like sitting in a bush for 15 or 20 seconds and waiting to see if they're going to extend, or waiting for 10 seconds to wait until the enemy laner is going to walk up to kill a cannon minion so that you can reliably walk forwards and find a successful gank. But it's also understanding that if you're not in fog, if you're just showing on a ward or on a minion, then your play is not only going to no longer succeed, but it's your ADC that's going to pay a very steep price, because now they know exactly where the Elise support is and they're going to punish your ADC in a 2v1 setting. So get used to playing around minion vision ranges. Get used to kind of hugging walls and being unpredictable with your approach to lanes. Make sure that you're sweeping areas out. And then make sure that you're asking yourself if there is actually something to achieve. Is the enemy out of position or not? And if not, then embrace the fog, be a fog warrior until there's something for you to actually achieve. The next one is to emphasize neutral objectives. This is because there are so many neutral objectives nowadays. This can allow you to get on the same page with your jungler and to really start snowballing the game, because if we're not investing too much into our ADC, we want some form of win condition, and stacking up all of those neutral objectives is going to be a great start. And it starts so quickly in the game, right, with the first grub spawn. So let's try and meet our jungler at the grub spawn, and then we can kind of go from there. The other thing that is so great about the grubs for Elise is that it really allows you to destroy towers very quickly. When you have your blood song, when you press your spider form W to give you all of that attack speed and an auto attack reset, you're going to do a tremendous amount of damage to turrets. And if you have the grubs to do even more damage to turrets, then you can basically just one-shot them. Elise also has her spiderlings, which is going to take tower aggro before yourself, and that allows you to kill towers as well. So this is another reason why Elise is just so strong at snowballing the game. Next one is find a crash bot before you roam if you can. I know that I said that ADCs probably aren't going to be your win condition for the majority of your games and for the majority of elos, but you don't want the enemy ADC to get unnecessarily out of control if you can help it. And if you get to crash the bot wave before you roam, then your ADC is not going to fall terribly far behind on that window because the enemy team has no minion wave with which to punish your ADC. And we can perfect this pretty early on with that first grub spawn, right? So let's say that you're freezing bot, you want the wave on your side so that you have a bit of space to all in and kill them, but grubs are spawning in the near future, right? So then you're going to shove instead, you're going to assist ping on grubs, you're going to on the way ping there, crash bot wave, base, sprint to grubs with your jungle, and then fight or get your free grubs. And we're going to do that for second grubs, and Atakan, and Herald, and everything else like that. And the next is, you can gank any lane, and that includes bot, right? Like, you're not laning bot, but if you and your jungler are active in bot river, you can absolutely look to gank bot. You can gank mid together, you can gank bot together, just don't be stuck in bot lane for too long. The last point I want to talk about is to stay active on the map for as long as possible when your teammates are active on the map. Your gold doesn't matter, your health doesn't matter. If your teammates are looking to fight and to pressure the map, you're there with them. Most of the time it's going to be your jungler, it could be your ADC or your solo laners who are extending really far up, and then you can use that pressure that they are generating. There's no use in you going back to base to heal up and spend your gold when all of your teammates are pressuring the map, and then they have their fight, whatever happens, happens. They come off the map while you come onto the map, and then you're there active on the map by yourself, and you're desynced from your team, and you're never going to find anything. Support has the most freedom out of any role, so that means that we are obliged to match our teammates' pressure. Our teammates have more things on their list to tick off before they're ready. So when they are ready, we're going to be with them no matter what. And then basically we're literally just doing that until the game ends. We're going to be a psycho, and we're not going to hesitate. We're going to understand how to roam well. We need to have a basic understanding of how Elise is going to do damage with her spells. And apart from that, it's just about fighting well. There's no shortcuts to getting really good at fighting. You need to understand what most champions, if not every champion in the game does. You need to understand how to use your Spider Form E to get out of sticky situations or to dodge critical cooldowns. You need to understand how to consistently find your cocoon to land on the opponent. You need to understand when you should hold your cocoon instead of just flinging it out. But don't be discouraged. Your opponents are also struggling with the same things, and they're not ever going to perfect skirmishing and fighting well either. Now, what playing like this necessarily means is that we want to avoid, 5v5, even number of fights, front to back. That is not what your champion excels at. Your champion excels at picks and number advantage fights and dives and chaotic explosive skirmishes around the sides of the map. So be sneaky, be creative, kill the side lanes, find a bush to sit in that you think the enemies might check in the near future, dive those side lanes, and don't be surprised if you're not really looking for opportunities and you allow the game to just become a handshake 5v5 team fight. Don't be surprised if your champion does not thrive in that circumstance. What we're going to have a look at now is some Elise support gameplay from Beryl as an example of what not to do on Elise, and then from Keria as an example of what to do on Elise. Okay, so here is going to be some of Beryl's Elise support gameplay. I first want to look at his build. So this is the rune setup that he ended up running. Electrocute is fine for pro play, sudden impact, good, deep ward, good, relentless hunter, okay, I prefer bounty hunter, but that's fine. And then he goes inspiration secondary. So this is not really going to help what Elise wants to do. Cosmic insight, it always is going to give you some kind of value, but we're Elise support, right? And we need all the help we can get to do as much damage as possible because that's where our threat is going to come from. Biscuit is going to give you a little bit of flat health. It's not really about Elise's identity and making sure that we have the damage or the money to kill people. And here we can see what Beryl ended up building was Proto Belt with Boots of Lucidity, right? So he's just really going to do absolutely no damage with these items. He's stacking up a lot of ability haste, but he's not going to do anything. So he's basically going to only be a cocoon bot with no threat on any carries, on any squishies, which is awful. But apart from the build, let's have a look at some gameplay of what not to do. What Beryl is going to look to do here is he is just going to be in an even number situation around the middle of the map. He's going to get his team into a pretty sticky situation here, and we can see how useless this Elise looks like. So what we should be looking to do instead as Elise support is to link up with your jungle like we are doing, but then wait until we have some pressure on a side lane. Maybe we can link up with a Zillion and then dive the Talia, or we can counter jungle and try to pick off the Vi with our Pantheon. But if we're just kind of showing on vision the whole time as well here, we can see that we have no regard for vision being in this bush over here or vision being in this bush over here. The surprise and the X factor of Elise support is just completely nullified. And then if the situation arises where the enemy carries can kind of like space away from the cocoon, and then they just have like some tank that can body block the cocoon and we can't assassinate any carries, our champion is going to quickly become completely useless in a front to back even number fight with no information advantage, which is what we see happen here. Next example of the same game is going to be a similar idea. We don't have any information advantage. We just kind of like start a neutral objective without anything, right? Like we're not shoving top and threatening a dive over here. We're not getting really nice deep wards in their jungle and making sure that we have vision control of all of these bushes. We aren't being creative and finding a bush to camp while the enemies try to group up on a neutral objective and then find a cheeky pick. We're just letting the situation devolve into an even number handshake fight. And of course, Elise support is going to be incredibly useless in that situation. So there's nothing for us to do except throw out a human form E and die. Now what the game should be looking like is that we have a huge advantage in terms of the neutral objectives and probably even a turret advantage from finding successful dives and stacking up the grubs and the herald. And then we just have first move and we have a lot of threat and vision control on the map, and we prevent this scenario from happening in the first place. Moving on to Keria playing Elise support. This is Keria setup. The same primary domination page here. Electrocute probably better than Dark Harvest in pro play. Relentless Hunter, I'm still not convinced, but we can make an argument for that. But Keria decides to go Triumph and Coup de Grace to get that extra gold, to do that extra damage. He decides to actually build appropriately, and he ends up with all of the correct items, with Sork Shoes, with Bloodsong, with Storm Surge, as we can see down here. So that's fantastic. And in terms of gameplay now, let's have a look at the stark contrast between Keria, who actually has an understanding of why Elise support is strong and what to do with her, as opposed to Beryl, who just probably picks it as a flavor of the month pick and plays it like any other support, grouping up and warding and not embracing their strengths and weaknesses. So here, we're going to find an explosive, decisive skirmish before the situation can devolve into an even number fight and before we lose an information advantage. So we're going to immediately just kind of pounce on one target, lock them down, embrace our high burst damage, especially in the early game, and then the fight's over before it started, right? If I were to imagine Beryl in this situation, he might end up just kind of running away and conceding this bush, and then it's just going to be 3 people here, 3 people here, no surprise factor, no one-shotting someone, and then the fight's just going to be lost. But the decisiveness that Keria shows was calling one target and even using that flash to increase that surprise factor and finding that burst kill, injecting that volatility and that chaos is exactly what you're looking for on Elise support. One more example from this game from Keria. Most of us have probably seen this clip of the Ornn getting dove multiple times, but it's worth having a look at anyway. And this is even without our jungler, right? So most of the time we'd want our jungler to be here, and this dive is going to be even easier. But you can really just trust your champion's base damages. And even if this didn't result in a kill, you can always just E out and then look for a dive again afterwards, because your E is such a fantastic tool to reset turret aggro. Now, not only is Keria embracing his champion's identity and looking to be really confident on the sides of the map and looking for those dives, it's just well executed, right? Like what we wouldn't want to do is use our E when Ornn's W is up so that Ornn can kind of buffer his W through that CC duration. But what Keria does is he waits for Ornn's W to be completed and then he throws out his E, he lands it, he gets the maximum value of his stun and he gets all of his damage out and he gets out with his E repel as well. So fantastic job. And then of course this is going to happen again with a funny camera cut to Ornn's corpse. We're going to skip forwards a little bit here. But here we can also just appreciate the turret damage that Elise support can provide with Grubs, with her W. This is the second dive over here. Just completely psychotic and confident and trusting the base damage. And that's just what you need to do as Elise support.